What happens when a beloved music legend sits down for what should be a friendly chat only to be blindsided by disrespect and condescension on live television in just 34 seconds? One host's shocking comment would turn a simple interview into an explosive confrontation that ended with cameras still rolling and a guest storming off the set. Cliff Richard walked onto the Loose Women set that morning expecting warmth and lighthearted conversation. The audience applauded as he made his way to the panel, smiling and waving like he always did. After all, Cliff had done hundreds of interviews throughout his decades-long career, from promoting new albums to raising awareness for charity causes. This was supposed to be easy, fun, and routine. But from the moment he sat down, something felt off. Denise Welch, sitting at the center of the panel, greeted him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The other hosts seemed genuinely pleased to have him, but there was a certain energy radiating from Denise that put him slightly on edge. Still, Cliff brushed it off. He was a professional, after all. He adjusted his mic, crossed his legs, and prepared to talk about his latest album and upcoming tour. The interview began smoothly enough. One of the other panelists asked him about his creative process, and Cliff enthusiastically described the inspiration behind his new songs. The audience seemed engaged, nodding and clapping softly between his sentences. Then, just as he was speaking about how music connects generations, Denise cut him off mid-sentence. "I have to say, Cliff, and I mean this with all due respect," she said, her tone sharp enough to slice through the air. "But who exactly is still listening to this kind of music? I mean, surely your audience has well moved on by now." The studio went silent. Cliff's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. He blinked, then regained his composure. "Well, Denise," he replied calmly, "I think you'd be surprised. My concerts still sell out, and people of all ages come to enjoy the music. Just because something isn't current doesn't mean it lacks value." Denise smirked and waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, I'm sure there are still a few fans out there," she said. "But maybe it's time to accept that your moment has passed. Nothing wrong with that. We all get old." A ripple of discomfort passed through the studio. One of the other panelists tried to jump in to change the topic, but Denise wasn't done. And Cliff Richard, the gentleman of pop, was about to show that even legends have their limits. Cliff took a slow breath, steadying himself. Years of experience had taught him how to handle rude remarks with grace. But this felt different. He leaned slightly forward, his tone still calm, but firmer now. "I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish here, Denise," he said evenly. "But I've been in this industry longer than you've been alive. I've earned my place, and I don't need to justify my relevance to you or anyone else." "Ooh, touchy," Denise said with a forced laugh, glancing toward the audience as if expecting support. "I'm just asking questions, Cliff. Isn't that what we do on this show? Or are you too much of a legend to handle a bit of honest conversation?" The tension in the room thickened. The other panelists exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to step in without making it worse. Cliff's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed measured. "Honest conversation is one thing," he replied. "What you're doing is something else entirely. You're being disrespectful, and frankly, I don't understand why." Denise crossed her arms. "Disrespectful? I'm just being real. Maybe that's something you're not used to. Maybe everyone around you just tells you what you want to hear." "Denise, maybe we should." One of the panelists began, but Denise cut her off. "No, let him answer. Cliff clearly has something to say." Cliff exhaled slowly, visibly trying to remain composed. "I came here to talk about my music, my tour, things I thought your audience might actually enjoy. Instead, you've decided to take shots at me for no reason I can understand. What exactly have I done to deserve that treatment?" "Nothing personal," Denise said with a shrug. "I just think someone needs to be honest with you. You're clinging to a past that's long gone. It's a bit sad, really." The crowd gasped audibly. Even the other panelists looked horrified. This had gone far beyond playful teasing. Cliff straightened his posture, his eyes suddenly cold. "You know what, Denise? I've dealt with critics. I've dealt with people who didn't like my music. But I've never, in all my years, been treated with such blatant rudeness by someone conducting a professional interview." "Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic," Denise said quickly, but her voice had lost confidence. Cliff began unclipping his microphone. "No, Denise," he said, rising from his chair. "A conversation requires respect, and you've made it clear you have none. The studio went silent except for the faint hum of the cameras still rolling. As Cliff stood, a producer motioned frantically from behind the cameras. One of the other panelists tried to defuse the moment. "Cliff, please, maybe we can just." But Cliff gently shook his head. "I appreciate it," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But I think it's best if I go. This clearly isn't working." Denise suddenly stood too, her voice rising with panic and pride. "You can't just leave. We're in the middle of a live show. Watch me." Cliff replied, his tone cool and final. The audience gasped again. A few clapped nervously, unsure whether this was real or some planned drama. But it was real, painfully real. Denise's face flushed. "You know what your problem is, Cliff? You can't handle someone who doesn't worship the ground you walk on. You're so used to being treated like royalty that the second someone questions you, you fall apart." Cliff turned, his expression unreadable. "That's not what this is," he said steadily. "I can handle criticism. I can handle tough questions. What I won't tolerate is being mocked for your entertainment. You've been rude from the moment I sat down, and I won't pretend otherwise." Denise scoffed, but her voice trembled. "Maybe you should look in the mirror. Maybe you should ask yourself why you're so defensive. Could it be because you know I'm right, that your time has passed?" Cliff sighed and gave her a small, sad smile. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about being right or wrong, or about my career. It's about basic human decency, something you seem to have forgotten." "How dare you?" Denise snapped, her voice shaking now with anger. "I've been nothing but honest with you." "Honesty without kindness is cruelty," Cliff replied quietly. "And that's all you've shown me today." The other panelists sat frozen, their hands clasped awkwardly on the table. One finally found her voice. "Cliff, we're so sorry about this. This isn't what we wanted." "I know," Cliff said softly, "and I appreciate that. But I think it's time for me to leave." Denise sneered. "Fine. Run away. Prove my point. Show everyone that you can't handle the real world." Cliff paused at the edge of the set, looked back one last time, and said, "Denise, I've lived in the real world for over 60 years. I've faced real pain, real challenges, and real critics. What I won't face is unnecessary cruelty for the sake of ratings." Then he walked off the stage, leaving a silence heavier than applause. As Cliff exited the studio, chaos rippled through the set. The remaining panelists stared at each other, trying to recover, but the damage was done. The cameras were still rolling, and the audience sat frozen, no one clapping, no one speaking. Denise sank back into her chair, her expression blank. One of her co-hosts tried to pick up the pieces. "Well, that was certainly unexpected," she said awkwardly. "We obviously didn't want things to go that way." Denise said nothing. The sparkle that had once filled her eyes was gone, replaced by something hollow. Behind the scenes, producers scrambled, whispering into headsets, arguing about what to do. "Cut to commercial," one urged. "No, keep it rolling," another argued. "This will trend everywhere." But even they knew, this wasn't good publicity. This wasn't bold television. This was ugly, raw, and unprofessional. Meanwhile, in the green room, Cliff quietly gathered his belongings. A production assistant approached him, eyes full of worry. "Sir, we're so sorry about what happened. Can we get you anything? Water? Tea?" Cliff smiled politely. "No, thank you. It's not your fault." The assistant hesitated. "Is there anything you'd like us to tell them?" Cliff paused, then shook his head. "Just that I wish them well, all of them, even Denise. I hope she figures out whatever it is that's making her act like that." He left the studio with quiet dignity, his publicist rushing to meet him outside. "Cliff, everyone's calling," she said anxiously. "News outlets, radio stations, they all want a statement." "Tell them the truth," Cliff said simply. "I was disrespected." I spoke calmly. "When it became clear it wouldn't stop, I walked away. That's all." Social media didn't take long to explode. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were trending. Viewers flooded comment sections with outrage and support. "Good for him," one user wrote. "Nobody deserves to be treated like that." Another added, "Denise completely crossed the line. That was painful to watch." Inside her dressing room, Denise sat alone before her mirror. The confident, outspoken host who had started that interview was gone. In her place sat someone questioning her own choices. The words Cliff had said echoed in her mind. "Honesty without kindness is cruelty." She wanted to brush it off, to blame him for overreacting. But deep down, she knew the truth. Outside, the studio lights dimmed. The crew packed up in silence. The moment was over, but its echo would linger. For Cliff, it became a reminder that dignity speaks louder than outrage. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness, it's strength.